Thrive by the Rising Muse. Here we discuss faith, family, and mental health aspects of all our lives. Today we will talk about two very important figures whose lives encompass all these aspects of life.
Our space is not one for conclusions that arrive too quickly or lessons that feel clean by the end. This is a space where we stay with the parts of history that were lived in real time without knowing how things would turn out. I'm Vita.
I'm Natty,
and we're here to thrive. We talk a lot about resilience, but rarely do we slow down enough to examine what resilience actually feels like in the body. Not after the fact, not once the story has been wrapped in meaning, but while it is still happening, while fear is unresolved, while danger is ongoing, and while the nervous system is still bracing.
Today's episode asks something specific of you. It asks you not to rush, not to listen for an inspirational quote or the takeaway. It asks you to listen the way you would listen if someone were telling you something fragile, something they survive, but are still carrying.
Because this story is not about a moment. It's about accumulation, about what happens when pressure doesn't come once, but it keeps coming over and over again, and when there is no clear boundary between public life and private life, when history enters the home.
Today we are telling one story, but it has two nervous systems inside of it.
Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King.
Not an icon, an accessory, not a leader and a supporter, but two full human beings married to one another, raising children, managing fear, negotiating faith, and learning in real time what it meant to live inside a movement that did not leave them alone when the cameras went away.
We want to be very clear about what this episode is not doing. We are not polishing anyone into a symbol. We are not flattening complexity, into hero worship. And we are not pretending that courage is something you either have or don't have.
What we're exploring is containment, emotional containment, psychological containment, the invisible labor required to keep functioning when fear is no longer hypothetical. So let's talk about the historical moment and the private one.
Place yourself in Montgomery, Alabama, January 1956. Montgomery bus boycott is underway. It has only been a few months, but the city already feels different. Charged, fractured, suspended between what has been tolerated for decades and what is now being openly challenged.
This is important to remember. Movements do not arrive fully formed. They begin messy, they escalate quickly, and they create consequences long before the system adjusts.
Threats are already part of their daily life. Phone calls in the night, letters, warnings from supporters and enemies alike.
And emerging at the center of this moment is a 27-year-old pastor, Martin Luther King Jr., a young newlywed in Montgomery, newly married, and a newly father.
History often frames Martin as if he stepped into leadership already armored, already resolved, already unshakable.
But psychologically, that is simply not true. Martin carried intensity from a very young age. He felt deeply. He internalized conflict. As a teenager, after the death of his grandmother, a foundational attachment figure, he attempted suicide. That detail is often avoided, but it matters. not because it diminishes him, but because it humanizes the emotional range he lived with.
It tells us something crucial. Martin was not detached from pain. He was porous to it. Now, place that nervous system inside the role of movement leader, inside constant surveillance, inside threats of violence, inside the pressure of being needed, not just politically, but spiritually as well.
And then there is the hope. Let's talk about Coretta before the bomb, not yet the story people actually tell.
Coretta Scott King is often introduced in history as a figure who becomes important later, after the assassination, after the public mourning, after the legacy needs stewardship. But long before that, she is already making choices that require courage, just quieter one.
She's educated, politically aware, a trained musician with her own aspirations. She understands the stakes of what Martin is stepping into, and she is newly postpartum. She had just had a baby 2 months before.
That detail is not incidental. Postpartum is a full body recalibration. Hormones are shifting. Sleep is fractured. Vigilance is heightened. The nervous system is already operating closer to the edge.
Can you just imagine having a 2 month old? You're not even where you were not from Montgomery. You just moved in there.
Brand new.
Brand new. And you already have your husband, not only who's a pastor, who has his own radio kinds of obligations, and pastor's wife has her own obligations of her own as a in a Baptist church. You would know that
First lady.
First lady in a Black Baptist church. And then you have the threats and all that commotion and all that stress.
But then think about this. Your husband, the father of your child, the minister, the pastor, and now a movement leader. And that's a movement of people for non-violence. Okay? Use your words, not your hands, not your feet, not weapons.
Yep.
Use your words. So moving from that, I'm pretty sure it was like she was in a whirlwind because so much was coming. And then the security 24/7.
Well, yeah, what it is to be at home, and every time he leaves out, you don't know if he's coming back. It's crazy.
Don't know if it's the last time.
Yeah. Add to that the knowledge that your home is no longer private. Everybody's coming and going, not only because you're the pastor, but because of the political movement.
And that your address is known. That threat is not theoretical, okay? It's not theoretical that your husband's public role brings danger through the front door.
Nope, those threats were really real.
Yes.
And this is where they were emotionally before the bombing. So let's talk about how the marriage was inside the movement.
One of the hardest things to hold in this story is that neither Martin nor Coretta fully consented to the scale of what was coming.
They consented to the values, to faith, to justice, to service, but I think from documentaries I've seen, he was kind of like nominated. He was there to support, and people said, "Yeah, you go."
Yeah, we have a way of saying, yeah. You talk real good. Let him do it.
Yeah, being voluntold instead of you volunteering, you're being voluntold.
Yeah, he could do it. He could do it. But the velocity of the movement, the speed at which it consumed their lives was something they learned by surviving it.
See, leadership did not stay at the church. It came home with it. They sat at the kitchen table. It interrupted sleep. It entered the marriage bed.
And this is where we begin to see the psychological split that will define their story. Martin's work required outward projection, speeches, sermons, moral clarity in public. Coretta's work increasingly required inward regulation, holding fear so children can feel safe, so a husband can keep functioning, so a home doesn't collapse under the pressure.
And this is not passive support, this is active containment day after day. So let's talk about when they started sensing the impending danger.
By January of 1956, both Martin and Coretta understand something instinctively, even if they don't say it out loud.
They know things are going to get worse before it gets better.
Violence is not a distant possibility, it is approaching quickly.
And here is where psychology matters.
Living under threat does something specific to the nervous system. You don't relax fully, you scan, you prepare, you rehearse worst case scenarios in your mind without realizing you're doing it.
You know, we were talking about anxiety not too long ago, and again, you imagine you're laying down in bed, any noise, what is that? What's happening? What could it be? Even the kid crying. Is the baby safe? Is somebody going to go through that window?
But at that time, think about it. The phone was right next to the bed.
Right.
And it wasn't discreet like a cell phone rings today.
It will wake up everybody.
And for that ring to come in the middle of the night, it can't be anything good. Okay, I'm not calling at 3 in the morning to tell you congratulations. No, I'm calling at 3 in the morning to tell you they coming. Run.
Right.
Okay, or prepare or brace.
Or to tell you that somebody who was in the movement is no longer here.
Yeah.
Or is in jail or something to that nature.
But it will not be good news.
Yeah, it's not like I have $1,000 for you. Mm-hmm. For Martin, this shows up as exhaustion, anxiety. It is a sense that he's running out of internal resources.
Mm-hmm. And for Coretta, it shows up as vigilance, awareness, the quiet calculation of how to keep a baby safe in a world that's becoming less predictable.
I think any mom can relate to that. Mm-hmm. Neither of them knows exactly when violence will arrive, only that it's very likely that it will, and it will soon.
Mm-hmm. Because everything that follows, the kitchen table, the prayer, the bomb, happens inside this emotional weather system. By the third week of January 1956, the phone in the King household has developed a pattern.
Their phone rings late, after normal hours, when the house is quiet enough that the sound carries. I'll tell you, it wakes the whole house. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's anonymous. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's the voice of somebody else at the end, which is clear, steady, and deliberate. Mm-hmm. But death threats do not always sound frantic. Often they sound calm. Mm-hmm. And those are scarier.
Mm-hmm. And that calmness is part of the terror. It communicates intention, certainty. Martin has learned to absorb these calls in public. He lowers his voice. He does not dramatize. He does not want to frighten Coretta more than she already is. But the body keeps score, even when the mouth stays distant.
Each call tightens something in his chest. Each call adds weight. Not enough to collapse him immediately, but enough to accumulate. Mm-hmm. And this is how burnout actually forms. Not from one catastrophic event, but from relentless pressure without adequate discharge. Mm-hmm. Now, then comes the night that everything happened.
It is now January 27, 1956. Late at night, the phone rings again.
This time, the voice is very explicit. We're going to blow up your house and kill you. This is not a metaphor. These are direct words of what it's about to happen.
Martin hangs up the phone. He stands there for a moment, longer than usual. Then he goes back to bed, but he can't go back to sleep.
Would you?
I wouldn't even go back to bed.
I'm saying right.
Okay.
Right. Ooh, insomnia is not just sleeplessness. It's the nervous system refusing to power down because it believes vigilance is required. So it's telling you the alarm is going off and you cannot shut down. Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure, let's say Coretta was asleep. Long day with the kids, finally got them to sleep. And then the phone rang. I'm sure during the day the phone was ringing so much that they had people answering their phone.
Or they didn't answer anymore at some point.
Right. But see, then it kept ringing. It didn't even go to voicemail then.
But then we had
okay. The phone would ring forever and ever until the person, either you pick up or the person calling hangs up.
Right.
So it was
you could unplug it though, could you?
Yeah, you could unplug it. And I'm pretty sure their phone was unplugged a whole lot.
Could they be unplugged at that time?
Yes, from the wall.
Well, I know when I was younger, you could disconnect it, but I don't know if in the 50s you could.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was like he's standing there watching his wife sleep or watching her watching him.
Yes. And that's the thing, it's like you heard just like somebody tells you, I'm about to blow you up. And you're going to go back. I've been not in that situation, but it's in the situation of, I'm about to hurt you. And then you go back to bed and you just lay there with your eyes wide open, thinking, what did I just hear?
Well, then she asked him, who was it, Martin? Because the person wasn't yelling. Yeah. They were saying it calmly. And when he didn't say anything and just hung up, who was it? I don't know. What did they say?
Nothing. They just hung up. Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. To save her.
Right. Yes.
From what she's already going through. Right. So.
Yes, they protected.
And then you think about it. Martin goes back to bed, but he can't go to sleep. No. He lies there. His eyes closed, but his mind is racing.
I would be surprised if his eyes even closed. But and he starts thinking, he has to, about the congregation, about the boycott, about the responsibility that he did not ask for, but now he can't abandon it. Not without consequences for everybody involved.
And I'm thinking the first thing he thought about was my family's safety.
Right.
Okay. And then my congregation's safety. And then the people in the movement's safety. No. He called on God a whole lot.
I'm sure.
Okay. A whole lot. He also thinks about his wife.
Yeah.
About the baby sleeping in the next room in the house.
With all those threats, he has to have been thinking about death. Not in the ethereal way of death, but really, concretely, viscerally, like it is knocking on my door.
And unfortunately, I believe that he knew it was inevitable. It was coming. It was coming. He had already talked to the leaders. Something happens to me. You got to take care of my family. You got to keep my family safe,
Well, so many people had died before him during the movement. So many people had been hurt. Yeah, it was a matter of time. Sadly, it was a matter of time. So, I'm sure after that day, the kitchen was quiet, like every kitchen, all dark, And this matters because when you have a meltdown, it rarely happens in a dramatic fashion. It happens in rooms that we use every day. And he probably got up and make some coffee because we go into autopilot and do something that's mechanical and familiar. And he probably sat at the table. And that's when he finally lets go.
Martin puts his head in his hands. I can see it. I can visualize it. There is no audience. There is no congregation. No performance, no sermon.
Mm-hmm.
There is not the voice of the preacher that people are used to hearing. This is the voice of a man whose internal resources are depleted. He says it out loud because he cannot carry it silently anymore. I am at the end of my powers.
That is very powerful. When we are at the end of our wits' end and we have to surrender because there's nothing else. And that sentence deserves space to meditate on. Psychologically, this is the moment where denial collapses. He admits that he's in fear, that he's tired, exhausted, limited. And let me tell you this, that is not a failure of faith. It's actually an act of honesty. And honesty is what allows the nervous system to shift.
He prays, but not in the way we imagine prayer. He tells the truth. Do this alone.
Mm-hmm. And this is when you get to the point of surrender, but not resignation. It is the release of the illusion that we are self sufficient and can do everything on our own power.
And later, Martin will describe hearing an inner voice telling him to stand up for truth and to stand up for justice. But we need to be careful here. The fear does not disappear, not permanently, but changes is his capacity to continue in the presence of fear.
See, when we are in moments of stress, it's paralyzing sometimes. And one of the things that you have said a lot here is when somebody told you, do it afraid. And that's what he was um, doing in that moment. He was having to have the enough peace to not be paralyzed, but enough humanity where his fear was there. And I don't know, I struggle with the word fear in this case because to me, fear is thinking about what could happen. And in his case, it was almost the certainty that it would happen, you know. So I don't know if there's a better word for it. But when you're certain that something is going to happen and it's bad, it has to be even worse because you, as humans, we are wired to defend ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We are wired, fight or flight responses because we are, like I said, wired to protect ourselves. And when you are in this position, when you know something may happen or is going to happen, and you are powerless of that, but you still have to do what God asked you to do or what you committed yourself to do. I just can't imagine how that felt.
But then think about this. Phone call comes to Martin Luther King Jr. In Atlanta. Fred Shuttlesworth at Bethel Baptist Church, Birmingham, Alabama, Christmas Eve. His house blew up. They blew his house up right next to the church. And even though the house collapsed, everybody walked out. Everybody walked out. And from what I was told by my mom and my grandparents, that it was not just one time they did it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It wasn't just one time.
So they blew up his house several times?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And he kept rebuilding right where it was. It was the parsonage, which was the pastor's house. And normally it was right next to the church.
Yeah.
So where they have historical Bethel now, they have a parking lot. So where their house was, it was a parking lot. And then you have houses going down like that. But I mean, to get a phone call, they blew up Shuttlesworth's house. Lord Jesus.
And you're so far away.
Yeah. And the first thing you ask, virus?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, because technology
was not there.
It took a minute. It wasn't a Pony Express. It's a little faster, but this is deep. Just
It is.
knowing, because when he said, "I see the promised land," I may not get there with you. Why may I not get there with you? That's deep.
It is.
Going to your wife and say, "I may not make it," and making plans that if I don't make it, this is what you do. This is the direction you go in. Raise our children, for a wife to have that on her, not knowing if this is the occasion is going to happen or this is the speech that will be his last speech,
Makes me think, and not necessarily in the personal fear of them being attacked, but in terms of the spouse of military families. When you send that person to deployment and you have to have all these arrangements because you don't know if you're going to come back. And you may come back 20 times and you might go just one and not come back. Fortunately, it's very rare that military family gets attacked, which in his case, he had the fact that his family was being attacked on top of that, which is harder. But, it makes you wonder, you were in that situation, you just had a baby, and your husband had to go serve. And you didn't know.
Yeah, I had little ones, and he had even gotten out of the Marine Corps. He did his 4 years. And they called him back.
Oh.
For Desert Storm. Certified letter for Desert Storm. He was out. He enlisted 84. He got out in 88. That's when we moved to Atlanta. But then Desert Storm.
Everybody need to come home.
And he got a certified letter like
many people. You had little ones that now you don't know what's going to happen.
I did not know him. For a whole month, I had not spoken with him, and I assumed he was already over there. But I found out the night before he was supposed to deploy. That's when President Bush called a ceasefire. And when Lawrence told me each man was supposed to take 250 body bags with him. So you taking your own body bag.
That's what I'm saying. That has to do something to your psyche.
Yeah. Look at all the veterans that we have.
Yes.
And all the challenges that they go through.
Yes.
Because of things that they saw. So we're thinking about, we have a pastor, a husband, a
not
father.
Military trained, because at least these folks are trained.
Yeah.
This is just a civilian, a run-of-the-mill pastor.
And you've gotten so many death threats.
Yes.
And then you've seen what's happened to other people. And then you realize, they realize how powerful you are in your speech.
If I'm not mistaken, Emmett Till happened before this bombing. And that was terrible.
Yeah.
So.
But then think about this. Emmett Till was not the only one.
Yeah, because that was
who was desecrated.
Right.
Like that. Okay? And didn't know how it was coming. Because at that time, they were hanging people.
Yeah, left and right.
So they didn't know which way it was going to come, how it was going to come.
Right.
Did not know. So the kitchen table moment, that moment does not make him fearless. It gives him psychological permission to stop pretending he is invincible. Yeah,
because probably he was like, I got this. No, baby, you don't. It actually gives him enough grounding to take the next step. Not the rest of the journey, but at least the next step.
Yeah. And this distinction is very critical. Faith does not remove danger. It helps him, and it helps us process.
And that's very important, because people sometimes ask why God allows things to happen. They don't understand that sometimes things are part of a bigger plan. So faith doesn't remove danger. It just lets you live it in a different way. And I'm sure that the days after the kitchen table prayer were tense, but it was another day. Another day, and Martin continues his work. She continues caring for the baby, cooking, and supporting him,
Yes.
cooking, cleaning, washing clothes.
And then trying to keep her head together.
Yeah.
Okay? But something subtle has shifted. The threat now feels closer, more imminent. The body often senses what the mind has not fully articulated yet.
So while Martin rests internally, Coretta is living inside a different type of vigilance. She's home more and more often, alone more often, and she listens for sounds differently now. Everything sounds weird.
Yes. Footsteps outside, cars slowing down, unexpected noises. She does not catastrophic.
She doesn't make it bigger than it is.
Yeah, she does not because it's already big.
Right.
But she prepared. This is maternal alertness layered on political reality.
I also think about moms that live in violent places where, in the middle of war zones or stuff like that.
Dangerous neighborhood.
Right, that was my first thought, where you don't know at what point you're going to have to run and cover your babies because there's bullets flying around.
And then you hear something that sounds like a bullet and everybody hit the floor and found out it was a car backfire.
Or a firecracker.
Yeah, something like that. So to have to live in that atmosphere day in and day out, your faith really is tested. And if it's not real, it's going to show.
And I laugh not because it's funny, it's because it's so terrifying that it's like a coping mechanism. It's like, what you gonna do? When you have lived through trauma after trauma after trauma, sometimes I've seen videos that make fun of the situation where somebody living in a danger zone hears bullets and hears sirens and they don't worry about it. They keep reading their book. But if they all of a sudden everything gets quiet, that's when they freak out and go under the bed.
Yeah.
Because that's the unusual thing.
And you know what I realized?
Why?
I have PTSD.
Okay.
And let me explain to you
Okay.
how I have PTSD and why.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when Lawrence was falling?
Yes.
All the time?
Yes.
Now when I hear a noise, I'm like, are you all right? From his voice, are you all right?
You just dropped a shoe or threw a shoe at the
Right.
dog.
Now I heard that the other day and I'm like, are you okay? And he said, that wasn't me, that was Mason. I'm like, well, if you don't stop making that noise. But then it made me realize that I'm definitely hypervigilant when it comes to noises, when it comes to different sounds and silence can even be
terrifying.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
It can be.
It can definitely be.
So
let's talk about
it.
The
boom. The boom boom.
Mm-hmm.
Several days later, evening, Martin is not at home. He's at church. Coretta's in the house with the baby. And then it happens.
The bomb detonates without warning. There is no time to interpret the sound before the body reacts.
The windows shatter inward.
Smoke fills the space.
The house becomes unfamiliar in an instant. That is just, I just can't imagine. And many people live situations like this.
Yeah.
Like I said, people in war zones, people in dangerous neighborhoods, people who happen to be in an earthquake. You are asleep and all of a sudden you don't have a house. Stuff like that.
That's a bad feeling. We were in an earthquake in California at about 2 or 3 in the morning, and all the lights in the middle of the Mojave Desert on the Marine base went out. Pitch black in the desert.
You can't see your own fingers.
You really cannot. That's scary.
Yeah.
That is scary. And in trauma psychology, we talk about how the nervous system responds faster than conscious thought.
Yeah, so when she heard that noise, her body probably reacted way before she even realized what happened. And she doesn't have time to decide how am I feeling about this?
What's going on?
What's going on?
Just grab the baby. She's already moving.
Yeah, and she has to be holding her baby and running.
This changes everything.
Of course, once you've been threatened so many times and you are so scared, but now it actually happened.
They've taken away your peace.
They've taken away your safety, everything. And fear cannot be indulgent when another body depends on you. And as a mom, you understand.
Yes.
Once you have a child, your safety means nothing. That child's safety is what it is. Is why moms are able to lift cars with the adrenaline. What?
I got it.
Okay, share it.
In the year 2000,
Yeah.
we had a terrible wreck on 85. Okay? And the car hit us from behind. We were in a van, but basically we ended up being an accordion.
Oh, wow.
But when I heard Jill screaming back there, Lauren said I jumped out of the front seat and grabbed the door, that sliding door, and threw it back.
Wow.
Because my seat fell back on Jill's legs and she was screaming. So, and then I had to get my seat up off her legs. So that adrenaline is real.
Oh, yeah.
You know how I know it's real? Because Lauren said when he went to the impound to get our stuff out of there, he could not get that door open.
But you did.
He said he and Leslie tried to get the door open and they could not. This is a football playing, college scholarship,
6-something
Marine Corps football player.
Yeah.
And he couldn't get the door open. He came home and he said, how you get the door open?
Because my baby was in danger. That's all it is.
I said, Jill was screaming.
That's it.
He said, we tried to get the door open and then we couldn't get the door open. Okay.
Yeah, my baby was in danger. That's all.
Your body does react.
Yes, especially when it's a child.
Yes. And she does not know if another bomb is coming. Like, okay, this is the only one. No.
Right.
She does not know if someone is outside.
Yes.
She does not know if help will be
Go ahead.
safe.
And that's the thing. Because with all these people around you, you come out, you don't know if the person who's saying, ma'am, let me help you, is the one that's going to, shoot you or do something to you.
And yet, witnesses later described her as composed.
Look, I know she was composed. Part of me thinks that it was shock. And again, when you go through a big trauma, you go into autopilot. I remember when I had my car accident. And talking about cars with accordion, the gas tank came right here under my arm. That it didn't explode because Jesus loves me.
Yes.
They had to cut the car to get me out. When I get out, I stand up and I say, I'm fine. I'm perfectly fine. Everything is okay. And I did 3 steps and all of a sudden my body stopped moving. I couldn't anymore because the adrenaline had come down and everything was stuck. But in the moment, I was like, I'm fine. And I'm not even crying, desperate, scared.
That's because you're in shock. Yes.
So her being composed, some of it was shock.
I'm sure a lot of it was shock. But then a whole lot of it was talking to Jesus in here.
Yep.
And then talking to herself.
Yep.
Okay, because there's a song that says, encourage yourself in the Lord. Okay? So I'm sure, I can't fall apart. I cannot fall apart. I got to be here for Martin. I got to be here for the babies. I got to. But a bomb just went off.
Right.
Well, we're supposed to be safe.
Yeah.
And that's not a good feeling. Being composed does not mean being unafraid.
Mhm.
It means regulated enough to function. It means fear is present, but not in control. This is containment in its rarest form, but is also a reaction of trauma and shock in a heightened form, in a heightened situation.
So I'm sure the news spread quickly, and the neighbors gathered, and the police arrive, and the tension escalates. And Martin rushes home when he hears. He rushes back, and I cannot imagine what he thought of what he was going to find.
Yeah, because you always, the first thing you do, you think the worst.
Of course.
You think the worst.
He's expecting devastation, finding pieces of the family. His body is already preparing for loss. What he finds actually stops him. Coretta standing, holding the baby, alive. Can you imagine all those emotions at once?
That's too much.
It is too much.
In that moment, something important happens psychologically. Coretta becomes the stabilizing force in his life and their family. Her composure regulates him.
You know, sometimes people don't get enough credit, but I'm going to be bold and say most wives are the regulating force in their households. And nobody realizes that because they are busy doing the everyday thing. But they say women are emotional. But usually, even though we can be emotional, we are the ones who make sure that everything is regulated in our house.
The woman of the house determines the temperature in the house.
That's biblical. A wise woman, tell me the scripture. A wise woman
builds her house, and a foolish woman
one
tears it down.
There you go.
Yes.
And you know, this is rarely named when they talk about leadership. They talk about his leadership, but they don't talk about her.
This is not just an act of bravery. It is a big turning point.
Because from this moment forward, there's no we might be hurt or we might be unalived. It's not abstract anymore. It has entered the home. It's as real as it gets.
Yes. And everything that comes next, the speeches, the arrests, the surveillance, the exhaustion, is shaped by all of this knowledge. Let's talk about what happens next. The bombing does not end when the fire goes out. It ends only on the porch. Inside the house, it expands.
See, the neighbors were the first ones to arrive because they're right there. Some probably frightened, some furious, some very protective. Then the police, then the reporters, then the leaders from the movement. The space becomes crowded really.
Yes.
And this is when danger shifts shape.
Collective fear often looks like anger. Men in the crowd are shouting. Voices are raised.
And there is talk of retaliation, which is understandable. It's an understandable impulse, but it's also very dangerous and volatile.
And one spark could ignite violence that would spiral far beyond their home. The movement is standing on a fault line.
See, but at the center of this pressure stands Coretta, still holding the baby, still inside with shock, still managing her fear. This is an extraordinary psychological.
Witnesses later described Coretta as calm, but the calm is not the right word.
No, that's what I was saying. She offers regulation. Her steadiness slows down the room. It sends a nonverbal signal. We're not escalating this.
This is conflict de-escalation without authority, without a microphone, without recognition.
When Martin gets there, he has his own storm inside of him. He has fear for his family, the rage at the violence, because it's totally normal that you are so angry at somebody who tried to hurt your family. Guilt, because leadership made this possible. He's not entering as a symbol, he's entering as a husband and a father. The porch is destroyed. There's concrete torn apart everywhere, there's glass everywhere. But the house is still standing. The baby's unharmed. Coretta is unharmed, at least physically. And this matters, but it doesn't erase the trauma.
No, it does not. Martin speaks to the crowd. He urges nonviolence.
We had to take everything in here.
I need a second. He called for restraint. Your house just got blown up. Your porch is gone.
With your family in here.
Okay, and your wife standing next to you with the babies, and you're saying nonviolence.
Yeah.
No violent retaliation. Okay? This speech becomes famous. But what we rarely discuss is what it cost him to give it. To speak calmly when your home has just been attacked requires enormous internal suppression.
I'm telling you, I don't know. I can understand him going in autopilot and doing it, but in the middle of all those emotions, that is a lot.
It's too much.
It is too much.
That is too much.
Yes. Anger doesn't vanish. He just contains it. And the fear did not disappear. He just managed it. And that kind of regulation is exhausting, beloved. And to be able to manage, to remain regulated enough to manage a crowd when you have your own internal emotions working against you is quite the feat. And let me tell you something. That's something that leaders should learn from this particular moment. When you're in a leadership position, your words matter. You can incite violence or you can call for peace. And because you're in a leadership position, the people who look up to you will respond to either your violent tendencies or your calming effects.
That's why the Bible says that life and death is in the power of the tongue.
Yes. Yes.
And if you choose to speak death,
yes,
death will come.
Yes.
Someone's going to believe you, they're going to follow you,
Yep.
and they're going to do what they think they're supposed to do in your name. Right. But then you can also choose, like Martin did, to speak light, to speak peace. We're all safe. I can hear his deep voice now. Family is safe, thank God. But nonviolence.
Nonviolence, yeah.
Nonviolence. I'm sure they look at him like,
oh, I'm sure they did. Look at him like he had
really?
kids. Yes.
But I believe by now, the people won't understand why.
Yeah. It would have made it worse.
It definitely would have made it worse. Like it could have gotten worse. But unfortunately, it could have. And it did. Right. Coretta is watching her husband do what he believes is right. She is also watching him put himself back in danger.
Absolutely.
This is what marriage becomes complicated. Because love and fear are no longer separate.
You know, history record, speeches, of course, it does not record whisper conversations between them. We didn't have cameras in houses. Ring didn't exist back then. We can imagine.
No Alexa.
No, right. No Siri. But we can imagine some things. Fear would not disappear once the crowd went away. Questions would remain. How safe are we? How safe are the children? How much more of this we can take?
There is a term for this. Secondary trauma. The family of a leader absorbs stress that is not technically theirs, but is unavoidable.
Every threat that was aimed at Martin lands in Coretta's body too. Every attack on the movement enters their home.
Eventually, the house empties. The noise fades. What remains is silence and damage.
Silence after violence is not peaceful. It's filled with anticipation. The nervous system does not reset just because the danger has passed. It waits. And that's what PTSD basically is. It's post-traumatic stress. You know, after the stress, the trauma.
And the trigger.
And the triggers, absolutely.
From this night forward, the house is different. Every sound carries meaning. Every quiet moment feels provisional. This is how hypervigilance begins.
There's no evidence of an explosive conflict between them two that night. But strength does not require yelling at each other. It can be easy for either of them to be in this situation. He's concerned for his family, but he's determined by his mission. She's concerned for the family, but she's also determined by their mission. And the strain shows in an unspoken fear and careful grace. I'm sorry.
And Coretta understands something now with clarity. This is not a temporary crisis. This is a way of life.
And she must decide, not once, but repeatedly, whether she will stay inside of it.
Trauma rarely enters a life saying, I am trauma. More often, it arrives disguised as vigilance, fatigue, the inability to relax even when nothing is actively wrong.
For Martin and Coretta, the bombing does not become a memory they revisit occasionally. It becomes a reference point, a dividing line between before and after.
Yeah. For Coretta, the bombing eliminates any remaining illusion that political violence will stay outside of her home.
Before this night, danger was definitely understood intellectually. After that, danger is embodied. Her nervous system learns something new. This house is not a refuge. Hi, go ahead.
Hypervigilance is often misunderstood as paranoia. In reality, it is adaptation.
Coretta listens differently. She notices changes in the routine.
She tracks Martin's absences more closely. She scans faces in the crowd.
Motherhood under threat does not look dramatic. It looks very careful. It looks like rehearsing exits, like assessing rooms, like deciding whether it's safe for the children to play. Coretta later acknowledged that from this night forward, death was no longer theoretical, not for Martin, not for herself, not for her children.
This kind of knowledge produces a particular grief. Not grief for something lost, but grief for what might be taken. And still, Coretta states, this is not denial, it is informed consent, renewed again and again. This is chronic courage.
For Martin, the bombing compounds what was already built exhaustion, anxiety, a sense of being hunted.
When Martin is assassinated years later, doctors will note something startling. Though only 39 years old, he has the heart of a much older man. Stress leaves physical evidence in his body. Leadership under threat accelerates wear and tear.
Oh, yeah. Martin doesn't talk about depression the way we do now. He talks about exhaustion. He calls it weariness. But the symptoms are very familiar.
Difficulty resting, periods of despair, moments of wanting to stop.
Faith sustains Martin, but it also traps him because of the idea that leaders are not supposed to falter, especially spiritual leaders. There is an expectation of constant strength. He's not supposed to worry anytime.
This creates a split, presenting public certainty but doubts in private. And the effort to maintain that divide is so draining.
Inside the marriage, I'm sure parallel struggles coexist. Coretta fears for the family. Martin carries responsibility for the movement. Neither burden cancels the other.
Their love becomes more sober, less romanticized, more deliberate. Affection now exists alongside contingency planning.
That has to suck. You want to have a dinner with your husband and you're like looking everywhere to see if something's about to blow up. Secondary trauma does not fade on its own. It accumulates. Each arrest, each threat, each fear.
Both of them live with an unspoken question: how much longer can we do this? And it's asked repeatedly.
See, courage here is not a singular act, it's a daily practice. Choosing to get up, choosing to leave the house, choosing to keep loving. The threats change everything.
After the bombing, danger does not recede, it mutates. Physical violence has announced itself. Now, psychological violence begins to take the lead.
Martin becomes aware that he's being watched, that the phones are tapped, that conversations are being recorded, that the movements are tracked. This is not paranoia, this actually happened.
Documented
Mhm.
facts. To be watched is to lose privacy at the level of thought. Every word must be weighed, every joke considered, every moment of vulnerability weaponized.
The home had already been compromised by violence. Now it is compromised by listening devices. There's no room that feels fully private. This produces a unique form of psychological strength.
Coretta lives with dangers she cannot see. This is often more destabilizing than visible ones. She learns to speak carefully, to hold certain fears internally.
Imagine a marriage where intimacy must be filtered, where arguments cannot be fully voiced, where fear cannot be named freely. This is how they were living.
The Federal Bureau of Investigations, FBI, does not merely observe, it intervenes through leaks, through intimidation, through character assassination.
In 1964, Martin receives an anonymous letter. The letter catalogs alleged moral failures. It frames shame as inevitability, and it implies a solution: suicide.
This is not critique. It is coercion. It is psychological warfare designed to break a man from the inside out.
We know you did all this, and if you don't kill yourself, we're going to tell everybody. But by this time, Martin is already depleted. Years of pressure have accumulated. The letter lands in a very fragile place.
Shame isolates. It convinces you that you are alone in your failures, that exposure will destroy everything.
We don't know every detail of what Coretta knew and when, but we know this. She lived with constant threat to her husband's life and with the emotional aftermath of his despair.
To love someone in despair is to live on alert, listening for shifts in tone, watching for withdrawal, balancing support without control.
Faith does not disappear here, but is tested. The God who called him must now answer.
History prefers its heroes intact, but intact leaders do not exist.
And that's why we can't put people in pedestals.
Right.
Because they are human beings.
Yes, they are. Only functioning ones.
Yes, that's all that exists. Martin continues, not because he's not hurt, but because stopping feels worse.
Once again, Coretta becomes the quiet stabilizer, not by fixing, by staying.
The cost is cumulative: sleep, ease, and a sense of normalcy.
Because when we talk about legacy, we often skip the price. Legacy tends to smooth rough edges.
It edits out fear.
It replaces complexity with clarity.
It prefers certainty over contradiction.
This story refuses to erase the cost,
It refuses to pretend that courage feels clean,
or that faith eliminates doubt.
or that love protects against harm.
Martin is often remembered as a voice,
A dream.
a moral compass.
But before he was a symbol, he was a man living inside a strained body.
Martin does not continue because he is sure of survival.
No, he continues because stopping will betray something much deeper.
This is not optimism. It is conviction carried into a trembling body.
It's often framed as supportive, but support is too passive of a word.
She is an architect of continuity.
She creates the condition under which endurance was possible.
Coretta's choice to stay is not submission. It is power exercised quietly, power that absorbs risk knowingly, power that does not require visibility to be real. Their love does not rescue them from the reality, it anchors them inside of it. This is a love without fantasy, love that coexists with fear.
The marriage becomes a living system, holding grief that cannot be expressed publicly. Meaning does not descend on them fully formed. It constructs moment by moment,
In decisions to show up,
in decisions to keep loving.
clarity of purpose does not erase suffering.
It simply makes suffering survivable.
This distinction does matter. Myth allows us to admire without responsibility.
Let us consume courage instead of practicing it.
This story resists all the myths. They leave us a model, not a pedestal,
A model of conviction under pressure,
a model of partnership under threat.
a model of humanity under surveillance.
The truest thing about Martin and Coretta King is not that they were fearless.
It is that they were afraid, but they stayed.
Yes, stay in the work.
Stayed in the marriage, stayed human.
History remembers outcomes. This story remembers endurance and reminds us that change is not made by those who are unbroken, but by those who continue anyway.
Follow us on social media. We are at The Rising News on all platforms. Challenge your friends to help us get to 1,000 followers on YouTube.
Remember, if you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please dial 988. If a loved one is experiencing a mental health crisis, dial 911 or take them to the nearest emergency room. If you think you're in a domestic violence relationship and you need to talk or some assistance, you can call 800-799-7233 or text 887-888. Please make sure you're in a safe place when you're reaching out for help.
When you think of Martin and Coretta, look a little closer. Look at their humanity and the reality of their life. You will see that just like you, they were trying to do the right thing the best way they knew how. Until next time,
Dream like Martin.
Martin.
Dream like Martin.
Yes.
And don't forget to thrive.
Have a blessed day.
Bye bye.